If you could retain your personal training clients for 6 to 12 months on average, what sort of difference would that make to your business from a financial standpoint of view? Well, in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you 3 things that you can do that I did in my business that helped me to retain my clients for that period of time. Let's dive into what those 3 things are right now. Marie, hi, good morning to you. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you, Eric.
Okay, so we are sat here 12 months on from when you started, March the 5th, 2018.
Yeah.
We're now March the 5th, 2019. I mean, a year's flown by. Do you think?
It has, in some ways.
Yeah. So the first thing you want to do to up your personal training client retention is your pre-qualification. Now, let's just assume you're doing this over the telephone. What I didn't used to do, but what I started doing was having a very basic script with a few simple questions that I could ask the person that was ringing up. You know, for example, the age, the name, what they're looking to achieve, what have they tried before, simple questions like that, just to establish whether or not they were going to be a good fit for my particular program, which was weight loss. That's what I specialized in, weight loss. So whatever your thing is, that's what you need to base your questions around in order to determine whether or not you think you can help them. Once I got that information, I would then just share with them a very quick overview of what my program was about in terms of duration, the content. I'd also tell them what the investment levels were from the lowest to the highest. Now, having done that second part, giving them an overview and shared the investment levels, if they then said, I'd end that by saying, how does that sound to you? And if they said, yeah, that sounds pretty good, I'll then invite them in for a face-to-face, in-depth consultation. The mistake that I was making initially was, and maybe you're making this right now, let me know in the comments below if you do this, is I was just sitting down with people and just having a conversation on the fly. They'd be asking me questions, I'd be trying to answer, and really the conversation had no sort of real direction. And I ended up, I ended up wasting quite a bit of time with what I call, tire kickers. So having that pre-qualification is the first step you need to take in terms of increasing your personal training client retention. The pre-qualification. Let's get rid of the tie kickers and let's only sit down with those people that are serious about wanting to do something about the problem they want solving. Therefore, it warrants us spending our time, giving up our time to sit down and speak with them. So that's number 1. Step 2 for long-term personal training client retention is the in-depth consultation. Now, for this consultation, I want you to put on the head of a doctor and think about how a doctor works and operates when they see a patient. Patient comes in, doctor sits them down, asks them a bunch of questions, probably a follow-on from a telephone call, similar to what you'll be doing. Ask them a bunch of questions, come up with some sort of diagnosis, and then prescribe a course of action, whether that's going to be treatment, medication, go to the doctors, get an x-ray, whatever it might be. And 9 times out of 10, the person sat there says, yes, of course, doctor. We want to be adopting a similar sort of mindset when we're going into our in-depth consultation. We do not want to be seeing this as a sales process. We want to be seeing this as us being informative, educational, and diagnosing something and coming up with a solution. So that's the sort of backdrop, the mindset. That's where you want to position yourself for this part 2 in-depth consultation, which I'm going to break down into 2 parts. So part 1 is just asking more questions. So basically follow-on questions from that initial telephone call. You're going to ask slightly more in-depth questions. You're going to be taking notes as well. Make sure you're writing things down. Don't just be talking and not writing. Talk and write things down. And this can be broken down to a number of questions. As an example, one section that I had and had my team use was asking people about how did their being overweight affect them socially, at home, and maybe socially at home and at work. Was it affecting them at all? And 9 times out of 10 they say, yeah, it's affecting me like this or this. I don't go to social events. I never like to be in a photograph. I don't like going to works dues, or I'm not confident in business meet, whatever it might be. But what we're basically doing is, rather than making a big deal about, oh, you're overweight and you're going to, die of some obesity-related condition, we're just trying to establish how is it impacting them on a day-to-day basis. And what this will do is it will get them a little bit emotional. Now, we're not trying to be cruel here. We're just trying to make sure they understand the situation they're in. And when people get emotional, that's when they tend to make decisions. But we're not going to spend too much time here because our job is not to make people feel bad. They already don't feel great anyway. We're just trying to establish what are some of the challenges that they're having, and just to remind them that they do have these challenges a little bit. But the key question that I'd have on my in-depth consultation would be the last question, which would be, okay, Mrs. Smith, on a scale of 1 to 10, how committed are you to making a lifestyle change to facilitate weight loss? Not how committed are you to lose weight, but how committed are you to making a lifestyle change? Because the way that we used to operate is, and still do with the few clients that I do have, is to talk about lifestyle change, because we know that when you make a lifestyle change, the chances are you're going to stick to that much longer because you've made different habit changes, and that's a great way to sort of position that question. Now, I would ask them on a scale of 1 to 10, how committed are they? Now, the numbers I'm looking for ideally are about an 8 out of 10. I don't want a 10 out of 10, because if I get a 10 out of 10, I think they're just too eager and they're going to probably blow out. Nor do I want a 7, because if they're a 7, it means I'm going to have to work a little bit too hard. I'm always going to be pulling up by the bootstraps. So an 8 to a 9 is ideal. So typically, if somebody said to me, okay, Eric, I'm an 8, great. The next question I ask is really, really important, and the one that you would ask as well is, okay, you're an 8 out of 10. Can you tell me, Mrs. Smith, what's the gap between the 8 and the 10? This is gold dust, the answer they're going to give you, because the answer they give you right now is going to be the reason that they would have used to stop becoming a personal training client and having a long-term client, retaining a client long-term. That's the reason they would have used to get out of the program. So by uncovering that now, let's just say, for example, the answer was, well, I don't think I can stick to a healthy diet. Fine. As long as your program can address that issue, which ours did, because we spoke about healthy eating principles, not just following a diet. So our principles would allow you to be able to eat well on holiday, weekends, evenings, blah, 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 blah. We cover principles. How does that sound? We'd be like, oh yeah, that sounds pretty good. Okay, great. Where does that now put you on a scale of 1 to 10? And that might bump them up to a 10. Fantastic. Once you're at a 10, we can then move forward with the rest of the consultation. But until they get to a 10, I don't move them forwards, because I know even if they're a 9.9.9999 recurring, that point whatever, if I don't address that, that will be the reason they bail out the program. That will be the reason that your personal training client retention long term is not very good, because people will bail out, and sometimes they will bail out without even telling you, and it's a horrible feeling when that happens. Thankfully for us, me and my team, that rarely happened in the time we were working with clients face to face. So that's part 1 of the in-depth consultation. When we move on to part 2, having gone through all that information and taken some notes, we then say to the client, okay, would you like me to explain to you how our program works and how I think it would work for you as well potentially? And they're going to say yes, of course. Now, here's the important thing. What I never used to do, I used to just verbalize this. And if I'm just talking to somebody, they're having to try and interpret my words into pictures. And if they're not a visual, an auditory person, and they're more visual, they may struggle to turn what I'm saying into pictures. So to help them, I would have visual aids that I could show them how the program works. And as part of that visual presentation, I'll talk about the weight loss journey, the emotional journey, and I'll put time frames on that. And that was really important, because it got clients to see this wasn't a quick fix. They could see what was going to happen in week 6, week 12, week 18, week 24, and I would lay it all out for them. I would then show them how much weight they could expect to lose over a certain period of time. And what this is doing is, it's getting clients to recognize that, oh, right, okay, this is a long-term thing. They're going through all these different stages. So we're now setting them up for success, because we are painting the roadmap that they can now visually see they're going to be following. And this massively, I believe, increased our personal training client retention long-term. I really do believe it, because they've got a visual presentation. Once I've done that visual presentation and shown them everything, the next bit is just to make the recommendation like the doctor. So Mrs. Smith, based on what you've told me, let's just say they want to lose 20 pounds. I think the best option for you is going to be our Kickstart program, which is this one here. And I'd show them on the chart what the Kickstart program looks like. They could see the investment levels, and then I would just, I would shut up. And that is part 2 of your process to increasing your personal training client long-term retention. And before I dive into number 3 of the ways in which you can retain your personal training clients long term, I just want to share with you some training that I've put together. There's a link around this video, click on it, take you to a page. Yes, you've got to put your name in, yes, you've got to put your email in, but it'll give you access to some free training where I go through the 12 steps of how to create, market and sell your own successful personal training program. Now it's available now. It's not going to be available forever. I'm going to be changing it up, but whilst it's available, I'd certainly grab it because it will help you in terms of your personal training client retention. So grab that link or click on that link at the end of this video. And part number 3 is the onboarding process once a client has decided to take the next step forward with you. So typically you want to have some sort of terms and conditions. We used to have just like one page, really basic stuff, nothing too in depth, but just so there's some sort of an agreement as to how you're going to work together. Get your payment scheduling set up, whether they're paying up front or whether they're going to be paying monthly, every month for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, whatever it might be. And then the third part to it, which I think is really important, is, and I never did this in the beginning, but I progressed to this later on, but you could start off like this, or you could start to introduce this. I would give them some sort of a support manual stroke journal that they could, bring along to their next session, because, I used to do a lot of coaching. So I'd give them something that they could take away in their midst, something tangible that they would take from the session. I'd also get them to sign up for some support emails. I'd give them an email address to go to. They'd go there, click on it, and they'll start to get their emails pretty much within 24, 48 hours. So they now feel as though they're part of this process. And what we're doing is we're continuing the momentum. Otherwise, you end up running the risk of them coming for the consultation, they leave with nothing other than just a date in the diary. And I'm not saying that people are going to bail out from working with you, but when you can do all these other little extra things, it just further cements their commitment to wanting to start the whole program with you. Now, if you've enjoyed this training, check out the next training, which is also going to help you to be able to create, market, and understand how to sell your own high-ticket fat loss program.